In this video, I'm going to show you a few tips on fitting tyres and rim inserts to your asymmetric rims. Okay, things you need for this job today are your TCS tubeless tyre, your rim insert, a pump, the wheel that you're going to fit it to. Before you start, make sure to give the rim tape, TCS tubeless tape, a real good inspection, because now is the time. If there's any nicks or damage to the tape, now is the time to fit fresh tape to make sure it's a good setup to get going. And then a couple of little bits would be a good tie lever, a valve core remover, and finally some sealant. And then last of all, something like this, big plastic bin, and you'll see why later in the video. Okay, so before we get started, we're going to have a quick look at what exactly an asymmetric rim is. So if you take a closer look over here, you can see that the spoke drillings and the channel that the spoke drillings and the valve are in are offset to one side. We do this to equalise spoke length. It makes a stronger wheel overall. What that means is you've got a long side and then a short side. So when I say in this video we're fitting a tyre to the long side, I mean the side with a bigger gap to the spoke channel, and when I say short side, it's obviously the opposite side to that. Okay, so once the tyre's all lined up, valve is in line with the logo. We're going to fit the tyre to the long side first. Try and always start opposite the valve, so you get a lot more slack in the tyre. It's easier to get it down in the channel while it's on the other end, and then we can finish off at the valve. So getting your tyre set in the rim channel and basically just working the bead into that groove all the way around. You see there, it's not quite in the channel, so I'm going to make sure it slides up and pops into the channel. It'll make it a lot easier around the opposite side. And finishing off at the valve. And there we go. So that's the long side done first. Now pop that, make sure the valve is in the middle. Okay, I've got a confession to make. Some of you have probably already noticed that even though I said I was fitting the tyre to the long side first, I actually ended up fitting it to the short side first. I don't know whether I was so focused on trying to make it visible to the camera that I ended up doing like a mirror image of what I was trying to do. But as you can see, at this point, when we're fitting the tyre on its own, it doesn't make too much of a difference. It is easier one way than the other, but it works both ways. It is, however, super important to pay attention to which side you're working on when we come to fit the rim inserts a little bit later in the video. So for now, let's get back to it. So once that side is on, we're just going to go ahead and fit on the other side. Exactly the same. Really make sure that bead is sat into that channel. And if it gets tight at the other end, remember, get round there, work it into the channel all the way around, and it should give you plenty of slack to play with when you get to the top side. Because it's in the channel all the way around, got a bit of slack at the top, you should be able just to pull it over the bead, pull the bead over the rim just with your fingers. So there we go, we've got our tyre fitted to our asymmetric rim. Next step is to gas it to pop the bead up onto the bead shelf. Have a look down the bottom, down here, hasn't quite popped on just now. See how you can see it disappearing there. So I'm going to put some more air in, and you'll see this bottom section here pop onto the bead. You should also hear that satisfying little snap as it pops into place. So now that the tyre has fully popped on to the bead shelf on both sides, if you're going to use it without rim insert, well, that'd be ready to go. But because we're going to fit a rim insert, the next few steps are really important when fitting it to our asymmetric rims. So we're going to go ahead and let all of the air back out of the tyre that we just inflated. So first step, out it goes. So all the air is out of our tyre. Next step's really important to make sure we're getting this right. See, we've got the long side and the short side. The long side is going to stay on. We're going to remove the bead on the short side. That's the side nearest to the spoke drillings. So I like to go opposite the valve, up here, and you're pulling away to break that bead off, making sure that the bead stays on the long side. So see how I'm pulling it off, and it's going down into the rim channel, doing the same all the way around. So on the short side it's nice and loose, and we're actually going to pop that bead back off as if we're about to remove the tyre, but let's keep the long side still on there. Okay, so to help me with this, I'm just going to get a tyre lever and pop this bead off, slide it round. What that means now is we've got a nice big open space to get this rim insert stuffed in there before we pop the bead back on. Okay, so for fitting the rim insert, it's real handy to have something like this, a big trash can, open top, and we want it to be a smaller diameter than your rim is, so that you've got plenty of space to push down and you're not getting any feedback, any force coming up from the floor. If you try to do this on the floor, when you're pushing down on a tyre, the floor is pushing back up against you. So that is the ideal setup to start fitting your rim insert. So what's really important actually, and I haven't mentioned this yet, is you want to fit a valve that is compatible with rim insert. So you see how this valve here has not only a hole on the top like a normal valve, but it's got holes on either side. That means at the end, when we introduce our sealant through, the rim insert would normally sit across this hole that blocks it. These holes on the side allow the sealant to flood in and fill up your tyre. So make sure you've got your compatible valve fitted first, nice and tight, and now we're going to fit our rim insert. This is the fun part. I'm going to pop that in there. If you're fitting a brand new one, like I am, they're actually quite tight, so it does take a fair bit of force to stretch it up and over the rim. Maybe if I come around this side so you can see. So see this little channel here? I've got to make sure that that little lip, that channel, is down inside between the rim walls. So that is where it needs to be all the way around. So I'm going to be pushing it in and making sure it stays in place all the way around there. As I get to the other end, in fact for this next little section, I'm going to remove the bin, go down onto the floor and use gravity and force pushing away to stretch this down. Okay, back on the bin. So you can see just at the end there, it's not quite in place, so I'm going to make sure it's popped in all the way around. Same again here, look, not quite into place. And that's your insert sat on the rim in the correct place. Now what we need to do is get this bead of the tyre pushed inside the rim insert so it sits in the correct place. So as we mentioned earlier, when fitting the tyre on its own, remember to finish at the valve at the top. So that means you can fit the bead, or you can push the bead further into the channel, give you plenty of slack so you can finish off right at the top. The method that I've used in the past is grabbing hold of the tyre and your thumbs onto the rim insert itself. So I'm grabbing this part through the tyre almost, and I'm lifting that up as I'm tucking the bead underneath. So grabbing it like this, rolling it away, and then the bead tucks in underneath. And I'm going to do that all the way around. So you grab in, roll it in, grab in, and rolling it in. Making it look so easy. and just carry on doing exactly the same thing. Grab, roll it away from you. Okay, so I'm almost there, finishing at the valve. There's definitely not enough slack there yet for me to pop that last bit of bead on, so I'm going to go back across to this side and make sure the bead is tucked well underneath that insert in the channel, so it gives us plenty of room to play with at the top. So, same old technique, roll in, and can you see there how I've tucked the bead a lot further? I mean, that's where it was. Roll in, you push the bead right underneath. That'll make sure it's nice in the channel. I'm going to do that all the way around. If you need to, if you're struggling to get the bead into the channel, you can use a tie lever, which also helps. So you're basically just forcing it down inside, so the bead is sitting in the channel all the way around. Okay, we may have enough just now. Let's see. Pretty close. See if we can do this last bit by hand. And we're in. So that's it. We've got the insert inside. Remember, our long side is already sat on the bead shelf, so the only bit that needs to pop into place now is the short side. So before we finish off and put our sealant in, I'm just going to go through the steps quickly. We started off by fitting the tyre as you normally would, with no insert. Remember, we started on the long side, got that on first, then the short side. We gassed it all up so both of the beads are sitting on the bead shelves, and then we popped off the short side to give us plenty of room to get the insert in. So once the tyre is fitted without the insert, you're popping the bead off on the short side, taking it back off as you're removing the tyre, and then slipping the insert in. Fitting the insert from opposite the valve and working around the rim to finish at the valve, and then we use the tyre lever to push the last little bits in and pop the tyre on, ready for gas. Remember, same as we did earlier, keep an eye on that bead to make sure it's popped on all the way around. You should hear that satisfying popping sound as it does. Down there is the section, which it all often is, opposite the valve, is probably the last part of the tyre that usually pops on, so down where the writing is on the tyre wall. You can see this line here, that disappears under the rim, and that means that part hasn't popped out into place just yet. I think it's just about here. And there we go. Remove the pump. And again, we're going to let all the air out. The reason we're letting all the air out this time is we're going to put the sealant in through the valve. Okay, so we've got both of the beads sat up on the bead shelves, got the insert inside. It's actually completely sealed now, so if we put our sealant in through the valve, we'll just put the core back in, pump it up, and we're good to go. Put the hose over the valve, and it's a good idea. It works a little bit better if you rotate it so the valve isn't at the lowest point, so when the sealant goes in, it can flow down and pool out of the way, so it gives plenty of room to flow in. So just pop in sealant in, keep it going till it's all in there. When you are done, remove the bottle, hose, and valve can go back in. And this time when we gas it up, that will be your wheel ready to go. So let's do it. Now we only need to put this tyre up to whatever pressure you're going to ride it at, because we've got both beads already sat on the bead shelf, so we can keep an eye on the pressure gauge, and when you feel that you're at a suitable riding pressure, you can stop pumping, remove the pump, and as you would with any tubeless setup, bounce it around to spread the sealant and make sure it's ready to fix any of those flats. And that's it. We've got one tyre rim insert and fresh sealant, good to go. If you missed any of those steps, I'm going to put all of them in the description below so you can read through and follow them there. Thanks for watching. Hope you found that video useful. If there's anything else you'd like to see from us, drop it in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to our channel because we've got plenty more coming. Cheers.